It's my pleasure to present our article, Commenting for Fun and Profit, Experimental Publishing on the Decentralized Web at CSCW 2022. I'm Dawn Walker, and my co-authors are Ishikawa, Sutton, Udit, Vira, and Benedict. I'll first provide some context and cover a research question about transitions that digital commons support. Then I'll go over the case we present of COMPOST magazine and distributed press. Next, I'll review our findings, and I'll end with thoughts of what this case offers the CSCW community and HCI scholars working on themes of commenting, decentralization, and blockchains. The core research question we explored in this paper was, what opportunities and tensions arise from designing commons around digital creative practices that aim toward post-capitalist transition? To address this, me and my co-authors are sharing this organizational autoethnography to reflect on developing distributed press and COMPOST. I'll first provide some background on what exactly web decentralization might have to do with digital commons. Briefly, the current popular narrative of decentralization as it draws from the internet prehistory goes something like, the internet was originally designed to be decentralized, and while that persists at the infrastructural level, currently the things we do on it are controlled by a handful of global technology giants. On this slide, I have Mozilla's formulation. There's been a renewed wave of interest in decentralization over the last decade, as part of calls to take back control of our data, the web, our networks from the small number of digital platforms and companies that have been involved in surveilling users, spreading misinformation, and introducing algorithmic bias and more. I don't have time to go in depth here, but we situate COMPOST and distributed press within this wave of decentralization to reflect on the broader societal shifts this wave and project responds to, as well as the rhetorics at play. We recognize the real concerns highlighted in decentralization discourse around ownership of infrastructure, including the internet itself, and the identification that discourse makes of where power lies to change those conditions. However, in the background of this paper, we point to decentralization as a concept with tension. There's a lack of a single conceptualization of what it looks like for networks, despite attempts to define and systematize it. We also draw from scholars that examine how the term arises in response to different pressures at different times. Those have ranged from military survivability to more recently management practices, including outsourcing, and a sensitivity to market factors like labor costs. And along with others, we're cautious about over-investing in the term decentralization as in opposition to centralization, recognizing that that framing can flatten interventions to the technical ones and hide where desired or accountable forms of centralization exist. It's also just not about blockchains, though they are prevalent. In CSCW and HCI, engagement with recent interest in decentralization has focused on those, their infrastructural imaginaries, and their politics, and also extending those to distributed ledgers, and articulates the interplay of human experience and values when designing for these specific technologies. And when taking up these technologies and researching them, an understanding of contemporary decentralization and its long history with technology, I think, offers a richer picture. COMPOST launched in 2021 as a magazine about digital commons, but also as a way for contributors to engage in commenting. And we surveyed the literature on design of digital commons as a result. That scholarship understands commons as relations between people, practices, and things that require these ongoing acts. People have taken up commons for design of digital platforms, highlighting tensions of practical involvement and redistribution of value. Digital commons hide complex challenges. And while they're usually framed as information exchanges on a platform, I think they're better understood as often only one part of complex value exchanges and material economic practices. So on to the case. As mentioned, COMPOST is not only a magazine, but also a way for contributors to engage in commenting. Planning began in late 2019, and 2 issues were released in 2021, supported by a grant from Grant for the Web. This account in the paper emerges from roundtable interviews and collective writing sessions, drawing on analysis of design artifacts and project documentation that was completed during my online participant observation at the Tech Worker Cooperative, which physically hosts the project. Both COMPOST and distributed press emphasize participatory processes and decision-making with contributors, who are organized into labs in which all artists, designers, and developers participated in a time-bound fashion. COMPOST coordination happened through self and externally hosted tools that are a constellation of open source and proprietary software. It makes use of copyleft licenses to share both code and project materials, and draws from and extends approaches to working open that others have developed. Distributed Press, the software, glues technical features together through a set of Ansible playbooks that provision a server running an API, host the magazine issue website, and seed or pin, basically save that content on distributed protocols. The image on this screen is a set of treatments for the first COMPOST cover, as well as early versions of the magazine published to decentralized protocols viewed in web browsers that support them. 3 key themes emerge that we present in the findings of the paper. First, how drawing on commons-based understanding of boundaries actually resourced participation in broader ecosystems in unexpected ways. Second, that commenting as a frame deepened engagement and addressed the passive models of digital commons that others have described. And finally, there were challenges posed by the emergent lab model that speak to an ongoing need to continually link shorter experiments into larger transition goals. Next, on to the discussion. So this paper applies the lens of commenting to evaluate the development practices and ongoing activities of a digital platform and set of approaches that COMPOST has been modeling, which we see as a provisional attempt to render visible forms of resource allocation. It also is a reflection on the material work and negotiation of how to enact decentralization, both across technical infrastructure, but also organizational practices. As this was happening, there was a second wave of interest in Web3 and ongoing attention to blockchain in 2021, which provided many examples of decentralization in contrast to the organizational, operational, and governance aspects that this project enacts. In our discussion, we relate our findings and contributions to the maturing DWeb ecosystem. In particular, the Internet Archive stewarded a process to develop 19 DWeb principles, and we assess COMPOST against those. Those principles emphasize behavioral norms and mutual accountability and focus on distributing power over control of infrastructure as opposed to decentralization of technical characteristics of networks. We mentioned some potential sites of engagement for future scholarship. There's early signs of a community of practitioners around decentralized technologies that are reflective and self-regulating. And while important, a mature community alone cannot ensure better outcomes. Connecting them to a broader landscape of regulation and policy, as well as other forms of social and political interventions, is fruitful. New conversations within that ecosystem about digital public goods actually, we think, could benefit from commons and commenting as a frame to address understandings of boundaries and relations and use of these emerging digital goods. Next, while we were initially interested in ways commons could help understand transitions to new models, through collaboratively writing, we saw instead the ways that commenting transformed contributors from passive users into active participants and stewards. The space between experiments within the cohorts in the lab model and a sustained transitional commons actually posed challenges. Scholars have shown how digital platforms as commons pursue different paths for long-term sustainability. We see ways to extend this work into aligned issues of economic viability and financials sustainability, and that's promising within the larger context of post-capitalist transitions. Finally, returning to the research question we explored in this paper, what opportunities and tensions arise from designing a commons towards post-capitalist transition? In this presentation, I've described how me and my co-authors explored this and just some of those opportunities and tensions. I end with a call to CSCW scholars. There's space to contextualize HCI explorations of blockchain within the broader set of decentralized technologies, and also to connect to the prehistories and recovered histories of decentralization that can thicken and nuance those explorations. We hope this paper suggests avenues for both activities as we ourselves continue the work. Thank you.